I'm Dr. Pete Economo, the East Coast psychologist,
And I'm Dr. Nikki Rubin, the West Coast psychologist.
and this is When East
Meets West.
Have you ever really acknowledged thanks for someone that had a big impact in your life, Nikki?
I mean, I have, yeah.
So let's talk
I
about
think
gratitude.
let's do it. I mean, that would be, wouldn't that be terribly sad if I'd never done that?
Well, I think a lot of people forget to, and I know you like my definition. So
I love your definitions.
gratitude by Merriam-Webster is the state of being grateful, thankfulness,
Hmm.
the state of
So
being grateful.
I got to give it to Merriam-Webster for their compassion definition, but I think that one's like a little lacking because it's like the state of being grateful. It's like,
Yeah.
well, then what
Well,
does that
maybe
mean?
I think because they're direct, so that it's us psychologists, we get like so loosey goosey, and so
Yeah.
our feelings get involved with everything. But I think that's one of the challenges of gratitude is that what is it? Because so Merriam-Webster says it's a noun, but I
Mm.
often think of it as a verb. But I also think of a lot of things as a verb, especially in our
Right.
field.
Yes,
What's the
absolutely.
the, the inging?
The ing, the gerund,
Yes.
the gerund. Yeah. See,
you know,
my literature writing degree is coming into play.
Here it
Yeah,
is.
here it is. Yeah.
But like gratituding, like it's not a word, but I do think about it in that way of just like how do you express gratitude, and so what we think about clinically is both for others, but also for yourself. So I think
Yes.
that's key too in mindfulness, right? We think about the self gratitude too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's interesting you're bringing up the gratituding, the behavior of it, right? Which is,
Yeah.
if we were going to be more grammatically correct here, we would,
Please help me.
yeah, we would say practicing gratitude, right? Like
Yes.
though I actually, to bring in, what you just said about our feelings get in the way,
They
psychologists,
do.
they do. I actually think the noun of gratitude is actually referencing the feeling of it. So when I think of gratitude, I actually connect that with what I feel in my body physically, which is like a warmth, and it's
Yeah.
connected to love, I think sometimes, and obviously appreciation. But I
Totally.
definitely feel it in like kind of my heart space.
A big thing of appreciation. Well, actually, some of the stuff I've read about it, it's an emotion, it's a
Mm-hmm.
mood, it's a spiritual practice, it's a
Mm-hmm.
coping skill, it can
Mm-hmm.
be an intention,
Mm-hmm.
trait based. But they see there is research that actually finds so trait
Yeah.
based that that the state is actually what helps to create change, not necessarily trait. So I think of
Right.
like I had this academic advisor who I'm still friendly with, who's like positive Polly, like every just thankful for everything, which is
Right.
wonderful.
Right.
But
Right.
that trait,
Uh-huh.
is not actually shown to be as effective in improvement of life compared to the state when people can feel it in moments.
Right. Yes, absolutely. Well, and I'm not super deep into the research on this. Maybe you might have more knowledge about this than I do, but I am aware of some of the research that just practicing gratitude, a lot of people do daily gratitude journals, for example. It's big in,
Right.
in 12-step programs, for
Correct.
example, that when people practice gratitude daily, for 30 days, say, that
Yeah.
there's a change in their mood state at the
And
end of that,
that's right.
even if their environment hasn't shifted in any way. And that it fascinates me because it basically speaks to this notion that even when the things outside of our control, right, in the world are difficult, obviously lots can be going on, we can feel basically better. We can feel more grounded, more like ourselves,
Yeah.
happier, just from connecting with gratitude.
Yeah, well, and I think the key there, which you're always so good at, is that it's not about eliminating the negative.
Right.
So
No.
gratitude is about creating space for
Hmm.
remembrance of the positive. Because I think a lot of times we just go through those motions. We've talked
Yep.
about that before, where like we do. It's a psychological phenomenon where you remember the negative stuff more than anything that's positive.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and so when you connect with that feeling, it doesn't magically change the hard things that are going on.
that's right.
It helps you to make space for also what you do have. And actually, this is coming into my mind. I think it's an important thing to say as well, is that I'm always also very interested when we're able to be grateful for hard experiences that
Well,
we've had,
I was
right?
going to say that. Yeah.
There's our, there's that
Uh,
ESP.
There it is. Well, and so I was thinking of this exercise called "Thank You, comma challenges,"
Oh,
right?
like that. Yep. Hmm.
Yeah, because it's the challenges do grow. I think in sport we say like, no pain, no gain.
Yeah.
Um, I think there's some truth to, at least recognizing that in pain we grow. It's
Absolutely.
yeah. So
Well,
as yeah,
sorry
go
for
ahead, go ahead,
I'm like
go.
yes, that's right. I'm so into it. Well, I always think very literally of growing pains, like physical growing pains. So I'll
Yes.
share that example with patients. I'll joke for listeners that I can, even if you see my photo you can't tell I've
I
said this
knew where
before.
you were going with this
I'm
one.
very short. I'm
Yeah,
very short, and I say yes, I did have growing pains. Just
yeah,
didn't grow that much, but I have such a visceral memory of being probably like 7 or 8, and in the
yeah,
night having like very painful um aches in my shins when I was going
yeah.
through like a relatively small but still growth spurt. And it's like growing is literally painful.
That's right.
So
Literally.
absolutely, literally, like
Yeah.
literally painful. So yeah, but I think it's interesting that this practice of gratitude for what's hard is kind of a quote unquote like more advanced practice of gratitude, because I think when
Yeah,
people are really
probably
struggling,
higher level.
and
Yeah,
yeah, because I've definitely had people say to me,
just can't
I know
see it.
or I know I should be grateful, and they get into the shoulds about that, and it's like, okay,
Yeah,
yes, at some point you might be able to be grateful that this difficult thing happened and what you learned.
right.
Right now, though, you might just be too in it,
Yeah,
right?
well, and I was thinking about that. The example was like divorce, because I think
Right.
sometimes divorce is really hard when you're in it, and then there does come a time when you look back and you're like, I like the person I am now out of that marriage.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's a hard
Absolutely.
place to get, and our role is not to be like, hey, look at the other side right now.
No. No.
It's work with where you're at. I think of what was that movie, Rodney Dangerfield, going back to school, like from
Oh
the
yeah.
80s. I'm totally
Why?
dating
Yeah.
myself, but you're good at this stuff. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
And he had that like self-improvement class where he would go to the thing and he had to look in the mirror and like be like, I love
Yes.
myself. Yeah,
Yes. Yes.
that's not gratitude.
No, it's not.
Yeah,
Well, and I think that's the to bring in, like you were saying about the colleague, was it's like the positive poly. And I'm
yeah,
not saying that person isn't also skilled at practicing gratitude, but positivity is not gratitude.
that's right.
I always say to patients, I'm not a fan of positivity. People are
No,
like,
right.
really? I'm like, no,
Yeah,
I'm a fan of optimism. I'm like, I'm
right.
a fan of optimism. Positivity is a judgment. It's like,
Yes,
to be like everything's good, everything's shiny, everything's amazing. It's very surface, or very,
yeah,
and it can be very fantasy. And optimism, I mean, optimism is obviously a little different than gratitude. They're related. Is about
totally.
like, I'm gonna get through this, right?
Yeah,
I'm gonna be okay. I'm gonna move forward. And gratitude, which I think we can connect with when we're I guess accessing an optimistic lens.
yeah,
Gratitude's so deep. It's such a I mean, do you have that? It's like such a grounding
yeah.
feeling for me. It's not like the positivity experiences, very, yeah, it's like very flighty,
Fleeting.
very
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, you
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah, well, because gratitude is a deeper emotion. And I think in mindfulness, that's why it's a relative, or it's a portion of it. It's
Yeah.
not, um, there's no gratitude focused therapy yet, but maybe we're developing it. GFT.
Oh yeah.
Just
You're gonna just call up the patent office.
there it is. Let's
Yeah.
need another acronym. But
Yeah.
sorry, not a hater, but I'm just
Yeah.
saying, I think, but and the evidence and the research is really interesting. So I am a little bit familiar with it, having just written a chapter about it,
Yes.
and so it was kind of interesting to look at. I like a lot of the neuroanatomical research and
Yes.
seeing how
Same.
their brain structures, and so
Yeah.
some of the medial prefrontal cortex. And this one study found that they wrote a letter of gratitude, and then
Mm.
3 months later, they imaged the brains, and they just had to reflect on that letter of gratitude, and the same areas activated.
Ah, I love it.
So it shows this long-term effects. Only 3 months, but in our social science, like that's would at least indicate that there was,
Yes.
the longitudinal approach of that, right?
Well, that's so huge. And I hope
Yeah,
I hope listeners can really take in what you just said, that
yeah.
by
Sorry, break it down,
practicing,
please.
I'm gonna break it down. I know
Yeah,
we got super nerd
yeah.
alert
Sorry,
excited
mom.
with
Sorry.
that. We're like, "Ooh, neuroscience. Yay."
Yeah,
So what Pete's saying is that by practicing gratitude, so and in this case it's a pretty relatively simple exercise of like writing a letter of gratitude. So one behavior,
right.
going on the behaviorism here, literally changed the brain,
Yeah,
right? That
yeah,
then the brain also lit up
yeah.
when thinking about doing that letter, that there was
And the
some
letter, the
shift.
letter, just to clarify, could be to someone that you want to give thanks to,
Right, or to yourself,
yourself.
or experience, or
And
whatever. Yeah.
exactly, I think that's key too, because I maybe we'll. if you're willing, and I'll
Mm-hmm.
talk about some
Mm.
of the benefits, but maybe we'll talk about, somebody that we were thankful for that we never shared, as a little exposure. We'll see, a little
We'll
cliffhanger.
see. We'll see. Well, now I'm like, oh, somebody, you know,
Haven't shared. I know, because you and I are like Sherry
yeah,
Susie.
I know. I was like, I always share. I mean, I guess there would be like somebody, I think then it would sort of more speak to like difficult experiences, I think.
Yeah. Well, but I also like in very small ways, and this is the behavior I engage in. I almost always say good job after like I've eaten out, or if someone's checking
Mm,
me out, just like
mm-hmm.
this sort of like thing of like, thank you, good job. Because the
Yeah.
thank you is common and that's what we do in
Yeah, sure.
America. But this
Sure.
good job thing, I notice I'll watch people and they feel good.
Yeah, it's totally. Well, everybody wants to feel acknowledged and appreciated,
That's right.
and
Yeah.
it's human stuff, basic
So
human
so
needs.
as I was writing this chapter, one thing I thought about was being a lifeguard. And it's always
which
this
I
like
which I was also, remember?
ob.
Yes,
Yeah.
we were Pete and I were both pool
We
lifeguards.
were pool lifeguards, not beach lifeguards.
And yeah, not be. I had a lot of friends who were beach lifeguards. I was like,
Yeah.
I was not, and we were, and my favorite. No offense to being a psychologist, I love my favorite job ever.
Being a
Swim.
lifeguard. Swim
No,
instructor,
swim
sorry.
instructor.
No,
Swim
not
instructor.
mine. Not mine.
You didn't? Oh, I just played with kids and
No.
got
I
tan.
don't
I
like playing
loved
with
it.
kids, so
Oh
hello.
yeah, that's right. I was like, and it
Yeah.
was like my first practice being a behaviorist. Anyway, go on. So
Well,
being a
my
lifeguard.
brother's now trying to throw that on me with like, you got to teach your nieces how to swim, and I'm just like, oh, I mean, them I'll teach. I do love them, and they are fun
Yes.
mostly, and I only have to deal a couple hours with them, and I can give them back. But so I was reflecting on cleaning the bathroom, and it's something because that's the thing. It's like this sexy job, lifeguard, right? And it's like, well, I also had to take the garbage out, clean the
Oh,
bathroom,
remember
pick
the
up
pool lanes?
the
Oh, the
pool
pool lanes,
lanes,
terrible. I hated doing that.
couple
Yeah.
poops here and there,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
you
a
know,
brownout, as
a
they're known.
brownout.
As they're known. That
Yeah,
basically for those, it's you gotta drain the pool.
you
You
got
gotta
to
clean
drain the
it out.
pool.
Yeah, you
Well, or
gotta drain,
shock it in that
or
area.
shock it or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 But I thought about my manager there because he was very obsessive. He was like a
Mm,
former like corporate person, ran in a very affluent area, this pool club, and I remember like he had a lot of strict rules. And so anyway, I was reflecting on like, oh, like the one time I really cleaned that bathroom, and he
yeah.
acknowledged it, and I was like those moments, and I was just kind of thinking about like some of the most challenging managers we've had. I was
Hmm.
really thankful for,
Yeah.
because you learn to respect, even though you learn to respect your role, which
Yep.
cleaning a bathroom, and people have to do it for a living, and it wasn't
Yep.
something that as a lifeguard, you didn't think you had to do, and then you learn that you do it. So that was something I was
Absolutely.
reflecting on,
Oh, about yeah.
being
So
thankful for him. Yeah.
yeah. So, do you want me to think of someone I haven't? And I did just think of someone I haven't told them I was thankful for. Well,
Let's see.
this is, yeah. You want to hear it? It's
Yes, hear it.
yeah. Okay, here. I know it's a random one. Well, because I would have been too young to like even think to do this. But
Right.
my high school physics teacher, actually,
Yeah.
Mr. Murphy, it was my senior
Hey,
year,
Mr.
and
Murphy.
hey, Mr. Murphy, amazing teacher, just really funny, really smart, like had really high standards for us.
Yeah.
And I'm not I mean, I was not like a physics, I mean, like I've shared, I was like into like English and writing, and I love science, but I was not, I was not like a super
Yeah.
hard sciences person. And it was a really hard class for me, but I really, really loved it. And that really always stuck with me. I mean, to this day, I love physics. My dad and I dorkily like to read quantum physics books, like popular audience quantum physics books. And
Yeah.
I'm actually really grateful to Mr. Murphy because he really inspired,
The way he taught.
yeah, the way he taught, and inspired that
Yeah.
interest in me that like has like led me to be so interested in, I don't know, I mean,
Science.
the universe. I mean, honestly, it was really,
Think about the
so
impact of that. So thank you,
yeah.
Mr.
Yeah,
Murphy.
thank you, Mr. Murphy. Yeah.
And so
First one
our
that came to
brains,
mind.
our medial prefrontal cortexes are likely just firing
Yeah.
off right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I'm feeling very warm thinking
Yeah.
about that,
Yeah.
feeling,
Maybe even tearing up a little bit.
yeah, maybe even tearing up a little, I get a little verklempt. That's kind of how I roll.
It's totally how you roll. But
Yeah.
I want to just say, I want to list a couple benefits of gratitude, because I
Yeah.
think for me, I feel like a lot of the mindfulness practices, the things we're talking about, are
Hmm.
things that like are less tangible. And if everyone knew the benefits, we all brush our teeth because we don't want cavities because they hurt. And I
Right.
feel like if we knew about the benefits, and if we truly
Yes.
learn to like embrace them, so
Yes. I agree with that.
improving your physical health, your psychological health, improve sleep. right? There's
Wow.
much research that shows that it actually affects sleep, increases your empathy. It can reduce irritation and aggression. It improves interpersonal
Mm.
relationships and social connection, enhances self-esteem. Now, what listener out there doesn't want that?
I mean, basically what you're speaking to is improving well-being,
That's
right?
right.
Like really improving well-being. And actually I think it's important to share that that can start, like with any behavior, someone's trying to learn, that can start really small,
Yeah.
and what's coming to my mind is I remember once I was working with a patient who we were doing decided to do a gratitude list as part of their homework, and and they came back and shared it with me, and it's just, I don't know, it's probably like 10 years ago,
Yeah.
still sticks to me this day. They wrote some really small things, and they said, I know this like sounds silly, but I was really thinking about it. I'm so grateful for barbecues. And I was like,
Amazing.
you know what? Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. And I think about it all the time, that just
Yeah.
these small things, like
Yeah.
just like when I think about that, like I feel a little sense of joy.
That's right. Just being for these small things, and taking the time to, it doesn't have, like you just said, small behaviors. It doesn't have to be anything huge, but really trying to think about when and where can you practice gratitude. This has been When East Meets West. I'm Dr. Pete Economo.
And I'm Dr. Nikki Rubin. Be present, be brave.
This has been When East Meets West. All material is based on opinion and educational training of Drs. Pete Economo and Nikki Rubin.
Content is for informational and educational purposes only.